nice froth going on top. Drop a few ice cubes in there. Welcome everyone to today's video. Today we are talking about the iPad Air 4th generation. Let's go. So the iPad Air 4th generation comes in 4 different colors. It comes in silver, space gray, rose gold, green, and sky blue. This is the silver one right here, but there are different options if you don't like the way that this looks. So you can get this iPad right here in both 64 gig and 256 gig capacity. The height of this iPad is 9.74 inches, so about 9.5 inches by about 1/4 inch deep and 7 inches wide. In the box, this comes with the iPad itself, a USB-C charger, as well as a 20-watt USB-C adapter. So this screen has rounded corners, as you can see. When the screen is measured diagonally as a rectangle, the screen is 10.86 inches. This is a liquid retina display with a backlit with multi-touch and TPS technology as well. It has a fingerprint reader up here on the power button, so when you hit the power button to turn it on, that is how you will also unlock it with your fingerprint right there. This screen does not go the brightest, so that's kind of a drawback from the screen, but it does have anti-reflective coating on it, so that may help when you are struggling to see the screen. Like I said, the screen does not go the brightest. It only goes to 500 nits, and that is not even as bright as the iPad Pro, which also doesn't go the brightest, but it's not even quite as bright as that one. This has the A14 Bionic, so a fantastic processor put into this thing, as well as a 64-bit architecture. This camera right here is a 12 megapixel camera with an f1.8 aperture. You will not get nearly all the options that you would get on an iPad Pro, but honestly, who's out there taking pictures with their tablet anyway? Basically what you need a tablet camera for is... I actually don't really know. It does also shoot 4K video at 60 frames per second, so that is pretty impressive. I don't really know what you're going to be videoing with your iPad, but it does have decent videoing capabilities. The front-facing camera right here is only 7 megapixels with f2.2. So this iPad right here charges with USB-C, as does like the iPad Pro and the MacBook Pro, so this will not be using the same charger as the iPhone, but it would be the same as those other two things I mentioned. This is a 28.6 watt-hour battery, so that's up to about 10 hours of surfing the web on Wi-Fi. So enough said about the statistics. I'm not really generally a statistic guy, but there they are for those of you who are interested in those. The bezels on this thing are a really nice size. They're really good and small. The screen is really nice and large and looks really good, but it's not so close to the edge that you'll be struggling with your hand accidentally pressing the screen. So this iPad right here is compatible with the Apple Pencil, which makes a fantastic pair if you're into like electronic drawing and taking notes and all kinds of fantastic stuff. So the Apple Pencil right here just snaps onto the side, and then it starts wirelessly charging, so it's very, very convenient. So with a system like this, it seems like the Apple Pencil would fall off pretty easily, and it can get bumped off like that, but generally it doesn't really get knocked off that much, although that is something that you may deal with. It does have a pretty solid magnet, and it's not like it's just going to drop off, but if you knock it against something, very well may pop off. This also has these 3 dots right here, so it will fit into Apple's iPad keyboard case that is for the iPad Pro, but this has the same dimensions. You can do all the same stuff with that exact keyboard. So let's take this in perspective of the iPad Pro. So the iPad Pro starts at $799, and this iPad right here, the iPad Air 4th Gen, starts at $599. So being such a dramatic price difference, what are some of the differences between this iPad and the iPad Pro? So one of the most obvious differences when you just look at this iPad is the camera. There's only 1 of them versus 3 of them. So you're going to be missing out on some camera features, as well as you're going to be missing out on LiDAR. So if that's something that's a big deal to you, that's not something that this iPad has, although that's something that's going to be a big deal to only a very, very small sector of people who want a tablet. So the iPad Pro has the A12Z Bionic chip, as this has the A14 chip. So they are running on different processors, but honestly, overall, these iPads are very, very similar. So we've compared this thing to an iPad Pro. How about comparing it to a MacBook or any laptop? So the thing that I spend the most time doing with my laptop is editing. So how can I edit on this iPad? So with this iPad, both a mouse, trackpad, and keyboard are all compatible to pair to this thing, making it fantastic for using it just like a computer. Now, there are definitely going to be drawbacks to using this versus a computer. For one, it's smaller. For another, you have different parts. You have a keyboard, mouse, or trackpad, and the iPad itself. So you could be carrying around 3 things versus just carrying around your laptop. But let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I'm going to throw this thing into a case and then pair a magic mouse and a magic keyboard to it and see how it works. So this case right here actually has a flap, so you can stand this up just like that, and then you have a little stand for it. Okay, so that did not take me too long to connect, and now I am connected with both the keyboard and the mouse. So let's give this a test. Okay, the keyboard is working great, and the mouse is also working great. The motions on the mouse are not quite as intuitive as they are when you're like compared to a computer, but they're still highly functional. Okay, so when you are in an app and you just click the little line at the bottom, that will take you home. So it took me a little bit to figure out how to actually get home, but that is how you do it. Okay, so I am just airdropping some files, and then I'm going to use them in iMovie, and we are going to see how that works out for us. So here we go. Here I can add files. I'm going to select them and then hit plus, and then that will bring them down into our timeline. So I'm throwing in some videos right here, and then to move across, oops, I'm not actually entirely sure how to do this. Wow, this is weird. It is quite different actually from the iMovie that you would have on a computer, so it is something to get used to. Even though you're using a mouse and a keyboard, it is a different experience, so don't be expecting they'll be exactly the same if you're transferring from iMovie on a computer and you want to use this setup for editing. Okay, so after using this some on iMovie and just in general, the mouse is definitely not as intuitive as it would be with like a MacBook, for example. Some of the gestures are off, for example. You can't swipe with both fingers to change which page you are on. You also can't use one finger to scroll. So a few things like that, it's not as good as it would be with a computer. It would be different with a trackpad, but at least with this mouse, that is the way that it is. With the keyboard, most things work. You can adjust the volume, adjust the brightness, you can type, obviously. So a lot of great options there. This definitely isn't a replacement for a computer yet. The gap is closing quite rapidly between tablet and computer. It's getting ever so close, especially with that new keyboard that Apple came out with recently. So if you're buying this thing to edit, honestly, just probably don't. I mean, get a computer. That's still the way to go when you're editing. Although this really would work, a computer is still the way to go. So for the average consumer, I believe this is the way to go over the iPad Pro. The extra features are not going to be worth the extra price for most people. For some people they will be, but I don't think for most people they will be worth the extra money. This is a awesome option, especially for coming in a good bit cheaper than the iPad Pro. Hopefully this was helpful to you in some way. Thank you everyone so much for watching this video. I will see you all next week. Chalky milk make the pain go away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When the screen is measured diagonally and you should arch it. What? Never mind. It does about 10 hours. So that's up to about 10 hours of surfing the mat. So let's take this into perspective. Crap, Jared. Into iMovie, so and then from like the an iPad really pros outweigh the con. This is the way this is. Chalky milk make the pain go away.